Well, welcome back, everyone. This is Marcia Sinetar again. This is part 3 of the talk preceding this one on our archive of the talk that I did at Unity Bellevue, and this is the Q&A portion. You're going to hear abbreviated questions. I don't think you can hear them, and that's why we deleted most of the questioner's voice. Because just like with our sports events, even today, the microphones in the audience don't work very well. And when you hear a reporter today asking a question of an athlete, you don't hear the question. You hear the athlete's answer. So in that spirit, you're going to hear my answer, but you're not going to hear the questions. Now, this is just part 3. There would be a part 4, but it's so long that we've ended this archive at about the length of time that people could stand listening to any kind of talk. If there's an interest, please leave me a note in the comment section, and if I get enough interest, even a little interest, I'll think about adding the 4th section, which would be the final one. So with that said, I hope you enjoy it. I do want to mention that in the answer, one of the answers, you hear me speak about a method that I use with my clients called positive structuring. That method is a little bit esoteric. It does take some study. I've explained it as thoroughly as I can in the book titled Developing a 21st Century Mind, which was the book, by the way, and the topic of this talk at Unity Bellevue and several of the talks at that time. So if you want to hear more about it, you have to get that book. It's on Amazon. I have to add my usual commercial. I add it every time, especially in subjects like this, where in our Q&A we hear people wondering about risk-taking. Their anxiety raises. Ours does too when we consider doing this thing or that thing that is risky and we're not sure of the outcome. I want to suggest that we visit with a qualified helping professional, someone we trust, someone we relate to. You know, if you have a child, if we have a child and that child is afraid of the deep water, and we throw them into the deep water, first of all, it's abusive. They could drown. They could have a fear all their life of something unknown, because we remember these things, these traumatic events, where we lose control, where someone in authority has acted against our comfort, our well-being. So we don't want to do this to the child in ourselves. Why not visit with someone we trust, who's reliable, professional, qualified, a sounding board that can give us some feedback, some wisdom, alternatives? Why not? Thanks for listening. Enjoy. So now let's talk to each other. Who's going to be first?
I've had the experience of...
Well, I think they're both true. And I think, again, it's not an either or. I think they are experiences that we can count on. You can count on the fact that when you're certain about something, when you step forward, in fact, you said leader, that's what a leader does, goes out in front, influences, has a vision. Leaders also make mistakes, and they have to be willing to do that, or they can't step forward, right? So you're balancing it all the time, the possibility of risk and the energy to go forward. So I think it's both of what you say. Excuse me, there's a beautiful chapter in Genesis, book of Genesis,
where God is talking to Abram before he's Abraham. I think it's the 13th chapter. And he's giving instructions to Abram and Sarah. They're now in their 70s or something like that. And he says to them, it's like, okay, new chapter. He says to them, leave your house and go into the wilderness. Okay, that's number one. And he says, and leave your family, and leave your friends, and leave your kin, and your home, and everything, and go out there. And then I'll bless you. And that's what you're talking about. It's like you go first, and then everybody comes around you. And he says, and then you will be a blessing to others. So that's to validate your experience, and I have felt it. But I also think that the fear of what will people say, or imperfection and all that, is something that we have to sustain in order to step forward. See? Like that.
Well, what you're saying is very bold because it's true for us.
That's right, that's right. Because we're vulnerable, right? I too have been there. So I think it does make us very empathic. And that goes back to another thing about this next era that we're going into. All of us are on this surfboard, We're trying to keep our balance. And I think we are going to have tremendous empathy for each other.
I guess my last footnote on that is...
The one thing about that is that you may also find that you use your rational faculties. That's what I was saying earlier. This is what I have done, and I found it very helpful, so I throw it out for just your consideration, which is not to say you might not do some irrational things too. But what I found to be really helpful is when I have an irrational impulse, and I don't mean bizarre, but simply, the heart wants to do this or that, and the mind is fighting against it. I find it very helpful to have my rational faculties serve the direction of my heart. And I think that's really how it is meant to be. So logic is a wonderful servant. It's a tough master, though. It can grind you into dust if you let it be the boss. It just wipes you out. But as a servant, the strategic, tactical part of us is marvelous. So we wouldn't want to throw it out. That's something I would just suggest. Yes? Yeah. Just a thought, and then you can consider it for what it's worth. We all know what advice is worth. You would trust the direction that has been thought out. You've thought it out, right? You don't have to plunge into it. There's this small steps, small prudent steps. And it's not either or. This I have secure, and this is the unknown. Do I dare? What I would recommend, and that's why this idea called positive structuring, which I didn't even talk about tonight, it's the technique that I'm suggesting in 21st century mind, where we're actually constructing what we want in an architectural fashion. It's a solution architecture. So there is a way, and it cultivates your mind to think along the lines that I've been talking about, to think inventively. It replicates that way of thinking. But you don't give up what you have. So you don't have to frighten yourself. I'm going to say something about fear in just a minute. But you would actually go through a three or four step procedure to build what you want. And eventually you'll get feedback. You can make corrections. You're making a model of what you want. And then you just keep enlarging it and enlarging it. So you're not leaving out of fear. You're leaving because it's time to go. When it's time to go, you go then. One thing about fear, some of us have grown up with fear as a companion. And fear and excitement are very close. So we get off on it, if you'll excuse me. You know what I mean? It's exciting and it's stimulating. And so we frighten ourselves as a way of stimulation. So be careful, because it's the imagination. Remember I said about imagination. Turn your imagination to the solution. Fear says it's on the problem a little bit. So those two, small steps, construct what you want, and just watch that you're not scaring yourself to death. See Freddy Krueger instead. Or don't. Yes. Now this side of the room, get going.
I have a question. I don't know quite how to phrase it.
Well, we'll help you.
Your talk.
Yeah.
But there seems to be a lot in your writing which really echoes. Do you think you know that?
This is so profound. These questions are so wonderful. Really, that is the problem. Maslow said we are simultaneously worms and gods. And that's it. We crawl around and we can fly. And we don't want to give up the crawling. So we'll do almost anything to hover on the earth, So that's the resistance. And it's best not to force ourselves, it's just to acknowledge. One good question, I've asked it of myself a number of times, is, what would I have to give up? And usually it's fairly extensive to be all that I could be. You do pay for it. I said to a group last night I was in Bellingham. I was at another church in Bellingham. I had a wonderful meeting, just darling people. But we talked about some of this, and really I didn't want to be pessimistic. I'm not saying this to be pessimistic, but it's to your point. There's a Spanish proverb, and it says, I think I quoted it in Do What You Love, the Money Will Follow. It says, God says, choose what you will and pay for it. So whatever we want, it's going to cost us. And the best choosers pay freely, they pay willingly, and they pay in the currency that's demanded of them. But you know what I mean. It's going to cost. Your heart gets broken either way. If you love, it'll get broken. Mother Teresa says love always hurts. It does hurt. It's poignant. There's a bittersweet to it. It's not all just jubilant, ecstatic. Romance, maybe, in the beginning. But love, real love, hurts because you suffer with the other person. But what's the alternative? The alternative is not tolerable. Yes, go ahead.
Well, I think even in the law of hurt, there's still an upside in that. There's beyond not loving at all.
That's what I mean. The alternative is like dying. Yeah. But we are afraid of it. Right? That's why intimacy is so hard. Intimacy is not sex. Intimacy is human engagement, contact with another person. I'll give you an example and then I'll answer your question, especially since you're on this side of the room. I'm doing this workshop, I'm going around now doing training for professionals, helping professionals. And so tomorrow we're doing one here, and yesterday I did one, and we were talking about silence. And I did a workshop for a group of pastors. This was like 60 pastors. And we did a procedure where we walked around, this is an old technique, in silence, and greeted each other. And many of them, not the majority, maybe 15%, couldn't tolerate having someone look at them without words. Why? Because words are distracting. So you don't really have to engage with anybody if you speak. You can chit-chat, and you can interrupt, and you can play little trivial social games and like that. So we avoid with words too. And it takes quite a bit to be intimate, is the bottom line. Yes?
As you're talking about...
Thank you. I think it's purifying. It's maturing. And in its own odd way, this is where God uses the foolish things of the world to confound us and so forth. The pain, if you could call it pain, and you could call it anything else too, you don't want to over-dramatize it, but it makes you real in a way. It's like I said about your authenticity. There's something that I was looking at the other night on TV. There was and I was going to talk about it tomorrow too, about Zen gardens. And about the purity of a Zen garden is because everything unnecessary has been taken out. Okay, then I was thinking about our life and how there's an integrity to a life where everything unnecessary has been taken out. And when I said earlier that you can see a person's authenticity, but it's not about form, okay? Because it could be, one person could be a statesman, another person could be a homemaker, another person could be a child, another person could be in a convalescent home. But the person's authenticity shines through. And what is that? It's carved out, forged out of their own relinquishments and responsible choices. So it's where we're responsible, which means we take the consequences. And sometimes they're great. Sometimes the consequences are great. It's not all a big dark cloud, you know. And that's the danger. We talk and we focus on one thing, all of a sudden it looms large like the only thing. But life is made up of lots of things. Yeah, thanks for that. Yes, this gentleman. So life is it's an unfoldment, and you're right that this today's solution is tomorrow's problem in some way, but it's the process I'm talking about. It's this not getting stuck and discouraged and anxious, so anxious. The anxiety level in our country right now and the discouragement level, although it's a little better in the last couple of weeks. Well, it is. You got to admit it. Even the stock market's been doing better. So, but I mean, it's been pretty grave. There's a very patient person way back there. Yeah. Well, all right. The most obvious one is, have you had that experience where someone is telling you how mad they are and they're smiling? This is scary. That's scary to me. Or they tell somebody else they're hostile and they're mad at you, but they won't tell you. And you know because they told a friend, or it gets into that kind of messy gray area. I'd much prefer to have someone come up to you and say, I want to get something off my chest. I'm really mad about this. I don't like it when blah, 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 blah. Something like that. But for me to give a formula for how, in the sort of the numerous occasions that we have to let off steam, no, I couldn't do that, because I think we're all different. I mean, I told you about my dad. My father and my mother were the most gracious, gentle people, but they could look at me, and I knew it was all over. You know, that psychologist, and he wrote books for communication, and he had these little formulas. I don't think so. Not for me. That's my way, okay? So I don't know if that helps, but it's a forthrightness that I'm speaking about, where the body and the face and the words and the whole energy is anger. No doubt about it. I'm not one that says there's nothing wrong with anger. It's an emotion. These are gifts. There's a wonderful story. Let me tell this one story. I'm long-winded, and I speak just like I write, copiously. People ask, how do you write so much? Well, it's easy. It's just flowing, you know. There was a story about a Hindu master. I think his name is Satchidananda, something like that. Satchidananda. And there was a retreat, a religious retreat. And the aspirants, the religious retreatants, were on this retreat in India. This happened, I think, in the 70s. And, they were learning how to be calm and peaceful, and they were practicing non-resistance and all of that. And one night, you know, in India, I don't know if any of you have been, but there are big bugs, huge bugs, and they don't have some of the conveniences that we have here. So there was this huge spider in the women's dorm. And they were shrieking and screaming and carrying on because they felt it would be wrong to kill this bug, and they didn't know what to do. So finally he came in. And I don't know if you've ever seen his pictures. This tremendously imposing gentleman with a big beard and big brow, huge brow section like this. And he came in and he said, what's the matter? And they said, look, and we don't know what to do. And he just looked at them and he looked at it and he took off his shoe and he went, and he walked out and it was over. So I'm not suggesting that we kill everything in our sight, but sometimes the obvious is the thing to do.